afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining Workgrid and Liberty Mutual's session today. We're going to be walking you through a case study of how Liberty Mutual Insurance evolved their intranet to an intelligent employee experience portal. My name is Janine Markey. I'm the head of marketing at Workgrid Software, and joining me today from Liberty Mutual is Troy Campano, the director of Digital Workplace at Liberty Mutual. Before we jump into the case study, I want to take a minute to introduce you to Workgrid Software. Workgrid Software was actually born out of Liberty Mutual Insurance. So this case study we're sharing with you today is actually also the innovative story of how Workgrid Software originated. So what started as an internal initiative at Liberty Mutual to provide their employees a best-in-class digital workplace where employees' interactions at work were as personalized, timely, relevant, and intuitive as in our everyday lives, it resulted in the formation of a new company, Workgrid Software, that is focused on improving the employee experience inside and outside the walls of Liberty Mutual. And so as a startup company inside or coming from within Liberty Mutual, we don't consider ourselves your typical software vendor. We have decades of experience building enterprise-grade software for a highly regulated industry. We understand the needs and expectations of the enterprise, and we've been in your similar situation trying to navigate the digital workplace. At Workgrid, we believe every employee has purpose, potential, and passion. Today's digital workplace is creating massive amounts of engagement issues and productivity issues. This is all hindering the potential of our employees, and it's affecting what they were hired to do and ultimately their passion. And this is exactly what Workgrid Software is trying to solve for. So with that said, I'm actually going to hand it over to Troy, who's going to take you through and walk through the journey that Liberty Mutual took and what it looks like today.
Great. Thanks, Janine. Can you hear me? Great. So I am going to walk you through our journey of where we started with an intranet and ultimately where we landed with an employee experience platform, and then how we actually launched a technology company and how we're starting to share this now with other organizations. And so our story really starts in the year 2013. So that was where we began this shift between what I call the early internet. So back when I started at Liberty Mutual in the year 2000, we had an intranet. Email was the way that we communicated. File shares, Novell and Windows NT file shares were the way that we shared files. And we had a lot of what I would call big monolithic kind of ERP systems. So we had our HR and our procurement and all of these sort of corporate things in these large monolithic systems. And so we began in the 2010s to make this shift towards what is now known as the digital workplace. So we were rolling out mobile applications, our internal social network on the Jive platform, and many different cloud applications. So that shift from these monolithic systems to these pointed solutions, some of which were cloud and some of which are on-prem, just very pointed solutions. And so what we realized was that as we rolled out travel systems and procurement systems, IT service management systems, project management systems, systems to manage management systems. So, this is kind of all the typical stuff you see within all organizations. We didn't realize we were very quickly creating this sort of splintered experience for our employees. And so we wanted to do something, wanted to take a step back and kind of figure out, how do we solve a problem like this where we've sort of splintered that experience. And so we first started communicating and talking with employees. And so when we'd engage with employees, we'd hear things like they were missing important communications. And we'd say, how are you missing the benefits reminder communication? We've sent you an email. It's on the intranet. It's on digital signage, but you're still missing it. And we would hear, it's buried hundreds of messages in my email somewhere. I'm focused on the customer. I'm focused on my projects. And so that's just a low priority, and it's somewhere lost amongst the noise. With managers, we'd hear something very similar. So they would say, I'm running from meeting to meeting. I'm focused on project execution. And I'd be getting these approvals throughout the week, and I wouldn't see them, or I wouldn't have time to then log into a system, go through all the steps to be able to approve something. And so they were waiting till Fridays. So they would block like 2 hours on their calendar, and they would batch approve all these things, which was working to some extent. But the problem was, if you had an employee requesting access on a Monday morning, they're waiting now until Friday to actually get that approved. And if that is the first level approval, we're talking weeks to gain access to systems. And so we knew that that was kind of blocking work, and so that was a major pain point that we wanted to solve. Employees would say they'd have this feeling of cognitive overload. There were just too many things kind of coming at them, too many login screens, and even for the systems that had single sign-on, there were just too many steps in your typical enterprise system to get anything done. So just to look up your vacation balance was 12 steps. And it took a minute and a half. It's almost like you needed a vacation to take a break from what it takes to actually look up your vacation balance. Employees would say they feel like they're wasting time context switching from system to system. Had this poor perception of IT and corporate departments because each department had their own great, amazing tool, but none of them were communicating, and so that's what was contributing to the splintered experience. The content on our intranet wasn't personalized. Employees had difficulty finding information, and it just overall culminated in this complex experience that we sort of set out to solve. And so when we look at some of the data, it says the same things. Employees are spending 3 hours a day, just managing their email. 65% of workers are putting off work. They're doing the thing where they're waiting until Friday to kind of batch do it all at once because of how time-consuming it is. And 32 days a year are lost to inefficient workplace applications. So to kind of make myself feel a little bit better about this, this is natural. And this is probably something you're seeing in your organizations as well. And there's a reason for it, and it's called Conway's Law, which says any group that's designing a system, they're going to design a system that mimics their communication structure. So if you've got an organization that communicates like this, where you've got the finance group talking to the procurement group who works with the travel group, ultimately they're going to have systems that are structured the same way. They're going to be sending data back and forth in the same structure, right? So this is normal. So don't feel bad. This is completely normal, unless you've sort of put focus and you've put attention on this to prevent this kind of thing from happening. And so this is what creates this splintered experience. And it kind of makes sense, right? When you ask the treasury group or the finance group to hook up a new system for finance, they're going to make sure that it meets all of the finance requirements, that it's the best system that they can implement, and then employee focus and employee user experience ultimately becomes sort of an afterthought. If they can get a system with a great experience, great, but their primary focus is getting the engine that's going to run their business. And so we knew this was a problem that wasn't going to go away. So if 90% of all the data in the world's created in the last 2 years alone, we sort of see this exponentially getting worse and worse. But we kind of thought if we took a step back with all of the data, all of the information we had about employees, we thought we had an opportunity to enable the future of the digital workplace. So if we could take a step back, what would that look like? And so this quote here from Clay Shirky is kind of the premise of what we did. It's not information overload. You're not going to be able to solve that. There's going to be many different systems out there. The problem is really filter failure, and it's creating a better, more intelligent filter. And so that's essentially what we did. We said, imagine if we could create a platform that we could give to employees that told them what they needed to know, when they needed to know it, and what they needed to do at any point in time, so that the employee didn't have to do that. They didn't have that cognitive overload of having to worry about those things. That was ultimately what we created. And we made this shift. I pulled this from our project charter from years ago. This shift from 100 different places to go to this central digitalized hub, right? So something that kind of brings and glues together all of these things. Now, I think an aspect that's important here for us was design thinking. So we didn't go out there, looking at products, and we first started working with employees, understanding hundreds of use cases of what they were trying to do and kind of finding common themes. We could probably do another whole presentation on design thinking and the benefits of that. But we ultimately leveraged Lean. We did a lot of sort of experiments that we would launch, and we collect data on what was working, what wasn't working, and then Agile to kind of execute along the way. So these wireframes here were the initial concept. So it was kind of like this like TweetDeck, multiple columns of information. It brought together your team calendar, your team information, all of your approvals, all of your notifications in one spot. One aspect that was super important was we wanted to have sort of a future-proof platform. So we wanted a platform that, at the time, Google Glass was a big thing. Augmented reality could become a big thing pretty soon. Wearables. We wanted a platform that would grow with our needs, and so one of the architecture principles along the way was ensuring that everything we did was through an API, so that if it happened to be, smart speakers or it was, some form of augmented reality, we could get rid of the web application and replace it with whatever that next thing was. So this was actually a concept that we used to kind of sell to our executive team. Microservices at the time were brand new. They were kind of bleeding edge. And so we had this way to address systems that had APIs, systems that could only use batch feeds, file triggers from a mainframe. We sort of had approaches to integrating with all of these different types of systems, and then ultimately refine that architecture a bit more. And so, we kind of think of it as like a way to build applications and share context about employees along the way. And so this video that I'm going to play is the initial kind of concept of what we launched with, and this is the Workgrid platform. At the time, we were calling it Employee Digital Workspace. That was kind of the internal working name, and this gives you a bit of perspective.
Technology. It's supposed to make our lives easier, streamline workflow, and boost productivity, not overwhelm us with a flood of emails, information, and tasks. That's why Liberty Mutual is introducing Employee Digital Workspace. Think of it as your personal digital assistant. It gives you the information you need, when you need it, and how you need it. What if all your important tasks and important information were consolidated for you in one place, outside your email, where you could quickly take action? Now that's technology making our lives easier. Check the concierge for your alerts, task list, FYI notifications, and news. News and alerts are tailored to show you what's relevant to you right now, like past due assignments, office closures, and important communications. Your social feed lets you see what's happening in your personal network at Liberty Mutual. To-dos help you consolidate important tasks and take action from one screen. Unclog your inbox by having one place for all your FYI notifications. The work area surfaces information you need to get your work done based on your role, department, and location. Customize where you want to see your alerts and see a personalized view of your most relevant HR information all in one place. The features in the concierge reduce the clutter in your inbox and free you to focus on your day. Employee Digital Workspace also features customizable app cards. These personalized function-specific widgets can be built to track monthly sales, employee retirement plans, or any other activity. For example, this card was created for managers to keep tabs on their new hires and related onboarding activities. With Employee Digital Workspace, the possibilities are limitless. Simple, intuitive, contextual. That's the power of Employee Digital Workspace.
And so when we launched this platform, these are actually responses from our internal social network from our employees. We started to see things like, I love this. It's so easy to look at my vacation balance. I can't wait to see how this grows. It's fantastic. It's one of the most useful tools I've used at Liberty Mutual. All kinds of awesome, beautiful, fabulous. These are like not words in my 19, 20 years working within an enterprise that I would normally hear employees say about enterprise software. Like nobody gets super excited and jazzed about enterprise software. And so when we saw this response, we knew that we had something. So, spending that time with design thinking, really thinking about consumer-like experiences and reducing workflows and time on task and making that investment, we knew that we had something. So much that when we did sentiment analysis on the social network of what employees were saying, the number one word was love, which again is not something that you hear pretty typically within the enterprise space. So, for us, there were some pretty significant benefits, pretty high adoption rate, but I'll just call it a couple things here. So one of the things that we didn't realize until we launched the platform is we actually built a little developer tool that would let some of our groups send transactions, send notifications through the platform, and we ended up giving it to our internal comms team and finding out that when they used that and they sent communications, that the click-through rates for their communications were much higher than the emails they were sending, because it almost became this trusted channel that the company was sending information through, and it wasn't getting lost amongst the junk mail, the noise, and sort of their project communications. And so now our communications team is a heavy stakeholder within the product today. And then reduced impact of system migrations. This is like another thing that we didn't realize until we did it, was the platform is our experience layer. which we built into our intranet. And so this is it here. This is me editing my HR information, changing my mail stop. So I go through here, complete a lot of my HR transactions all through this layer, and then it's synchronizing behind the scenes with our HR system, which is still our system of record. We're in the process, or we just completed a migration of moving from an Oracle HR system on-premise in our data center into the cloud. And for a lot of employees, they're not going to notice the difference, right? This is their experience layer for the majority of things that they're doing. And so now when we make these big shifts in these new platforms and we put in these new engines, the employee isn't impacted as much because they're using this as their experience layer. And so where we've sort of spent the last couple of years is a lot of focus on what we call the intelligent workplace, which the benefit of that is employee experience. So we've talked a lot about, or you've heard a lot about employee experience today. I really think that is the next big thing for the digital workplace. That is what everybody is going to be focusing on, is improving employee experience. And I'm sure you probably heard a lot of this at the keynote here, so I won't go into too much detail. But there's a lot of great studies here from Deloitte, Bain & Company that draw the correlation between employee experience and employee engagement and customer experience. It's hard to have great customer experience if you don't have great employee experience. There's a ton of studies that you can find. You've heard a lot about it today, and the impact to revenue along the way. So this is why there is so much focus on sort of that next generation of what happens sort of beyond the intranets and beyond typical digital workplace. And so the workforce of today is expecting these consumer-like experiences that are just by default mobile-enabled. So one of our architecture principles, again, along the way, was that everything we do to make sure that it's mobile-enabled. So we actually have a way when we're building integrations on the platform, we build what we call micro apps or connectors into the platform. Everything we do, when we build it once, it works both on a native mobile application as well as the web. And so this kind of depends on your workforce, whether you're using mobile a lot, but that's one of our principles sort of along the way. And then creating personalized experiences. So my experience is different from the person next to me who might use different systems. And I really think this is what creates some of the engagement in these kind of platforms, is that personalized experience, that we're each seeing the things that are applicable to us. So the way that this works at a high level is we detect events, right? So whether they're through batch or they're real time, it depends on the system. We detect these events, then based on context and preferences, we create this sort of personalized experience for the employees. This is what I would call sort of the push model. And then we eventually added in what's called, we call this the pull model, where the employees can ask questions of the platform along the way. And then it can orchestrate across those systems. So now, just as an example, one of the things we do is what we call outcome-driven development. This is a way we sort of think about how to improve some of these processes for employees along the way. I jokingly like to call this odd outcome-driven development because it's kind of odd. You don't see a lot of this yet, and I think you'll start to see more and more, especially from organizations that are using design thinking. But this is like a perfect example. So let's say you've got an employee who wants to go on vacation. And then there's a series of things they need to do. They might have to update the HR system to take the time off. They might have to communicate with their team that they're going to take the time off. And then eventually update Outlook and set an out-of-the-office reminder, that sort of thing along the way. And then whatever else is involved in that process. And so what we do instead is we try to find and put a lot of focus in, all right, if their outcome is they want to go on vacation, can we get that down to 0? Probably not. We can't tell through osmosis that the employee wants to go on vacation. So can we get it to one step? And so that's what we do is we build this workflow where we give a screen within the Workgrid platform. You can fill out, I want to take vacation on these dates. And it's probably a little hard to see, but there's some check boxes about scheduling that time off, blocking your calendar in Outlook, setting your out-of-office reminder, which then on the day that you take off will actually set your out-of-office reminder, and then abstracting that complexity from the employee. So it kind of gets down to just one thing they need to do. And so every time we look at a business process, we're trying to reduce it just down to that one screen. One day, we'll hook into some kind of thing that's tapped into your brain. We'll figure it out. It'll be 0 clicks, but for now, 1 click feels pretty good. I think I was reading Elon Musk. That's another one of his things that he's looking into. So, being able to understand through the brain, we'll figure that out one day. But the key point is this sort of this digital experience layer. I mean, I think this is the key, and this is what you're going to start seeing within different organizations is abstracting those systems, letting your service providers still use their best-of-breed technology, but creating this experience layer that is for your employees. And I've worked with a couple organizations where they've tried to build this into their IT service management platform, or they've tried to build this into their HR tool, and they only get so far, and then in their HR platform, once they get to bringing in IT information and procurement and finance, it sort of breaks down. So definitely recommend using a system separate from your systems of record. And if you ever remove or replace your system of record, it's not coupled together, right? So you don't lose your experience layer at the same time you're replacing your HR system. So having a digital experience layer that is 100% API focused, that's kind of where that future-proof piece comes in, is so that if the next thing is Teams and Slack for your organization, or you want to get into voice, you've got a platform that you can, we call this running in headless mode. So having a platform that can run without any user interface, but allows you to build on top over time. So for us, the strategy that we use was we built this intranet toolbar that kind of pops in from the left. We have a mobile application and a desktop notification tool. The reason why we chose the intranet is the thinking at the time was, if your homepage is set to your intranet, it's almost like you've got this, it's like the most populous city in the world, and you've got all of this traffic going there, and you stand up a billboard, right? Like you've got all of these people focused in one place. It's probably one of the best places to build sort of your digital workplace strategy along the way because of the amount of traffic that goes there. But one of the things that we did, and happy to talk to you after on some approaches we use, kind of help fight through politics and kind of, who's going to own this thing, was not replacing the intranet. So also decoupling this in the beginning from the intranet. Our internal comms team at the time owned the intranet, and so we wanted to create something separate, and it's actually a separate deployable thing. It looks like it's on the intranet, but it was something that our team could own and run with and build and partner with our internal comms team, and not have to tell them, hey, we're going to have to go put in a whole new intranet platform at the same time. So for us, we found this strategy worked pretty well. That allowed and sort of coach our employees that our intranet is becoming sort of the front of our digital workplace. And it's just driving more engagement to our intranet, and then reaching employees outside of email, which was one of the key objectives, was getting things out of email and into a place that employees trust. And so one of the things we did was, instead of leveraging email, we built what was called smart notifications. So we're trying to solve some of the problems of email. One of those things was, unlike email, the notifications would expire. So if you sent out, let's say there was a town hall event, after that town hall, the notification should disappear or archive, right? So we're always looking for ways to kind of reduce that noise for an employee and remove things that are not applicable to them. We also had a way to track that the employee had seen the notification, which was another objective from our comms teams, which in email you can do if they eventually ever read it. But with this platform, we have rules and algorithms, and I think I've got a slide on this, where we are always bringing communication content back up to the top of the feed for the employee, so that we're ensuring that they're always seeing it and that it's relevant for them. As I mentioned, it elevates communications outside of email as well. This kind of became a trusted channel, even so much so that when our Exchange environment went down, this was the way that our help desk would communicate with employees that Exchange was down. And another strategy that we use, I think of this as like Facebook advertisements or Twitter promoted posts, is that we get some pretty good traction and click-through rates if we were mixing together. Let's say an employee was going into our intranet as the experience platform to approve something. If we were able to mix in internal comms content at the same time, it's kind of there while they're transacting on something. So we found that was a useful strategy. And then, as I mentioned, at the top of the stream, we have what's called the priority section. So this was a way that the employees were always seeing the most important thing. It's not sequential, which we wanted to evolve from email. We wanted something that's sort of always changing, where we're taking into account their needs, their preferences, and what they want to see, and understanding if they've read it or not, and then bring that content to them back to the top of the stream. So one of the keys for us in building an experience layer was this concept of micro apps. So here you can see at the top, that's me editing my profile again. That's hooked to an HR system. Time off is a separate time management system. Time planner is a separate planning tool. My team is based off an Active Directory org chart. Payslip is from a payroll system, and then the My Assets information is from a homegrown, customized IT hardware and software asset management system, right? And so the employees don't have to worry about, where are these systems anymore. They're using this as sort of their layer that they transact with. And so Gartner would call this the post-app error, where you don't have to really worry about, individual applications. You've got a way to sort of aggregate this functionality into one place for the employees. So this was actually one thing that our HR group had built. They needed a way to capture, for certain tax reasons, for tax laws, where employees were working each quarter. And so they found that if they sent this information through here, a couple quick dials, they could capture this and then feed it back into an HR system. They didn't need to create a separate system to capture this information. This is, again, kind of feeding into that post-app error experience layer concept. And then this is our time management system. So our time management system was a 12-step process, and it's kind of typical like enterprise software where you have to actually generate a report to see your time off balance. You have to choose PDF or HTML for some reason, go through all these steps, specify a time range. And so we knew employees were using this all the time, and so this was one of the ways we were able to bring this into this experience layer and get them to just one click see their vacation balance and 2 clicks to see their detail. And so the strategy we were really using behind the scenes in choosing which micro apps to build was essentially based off of Pareto's principle, or you may know it as the 80-20 rule. So we were looking for 20% of the applications that employees were frequently transacting with. And we knew that those 20% of the applications were going to deliver 80% of the benefits to the employees. So we're always looking for, what is that small, we're not going to replace everything in an experience layer, but if we could find, let's say, 20% of the things that employees were going to do over and over and over, they were going to spend most of their time in this experience layer. And so we had teams that, we have a survey capability in the platform. So we found that this was really useful to capture quick little information. Some of our IT groups were testing out Google Hangouts, for example. And this is a good way to kind of capture information and use it to make data-driven decisions. Employees seem to like to do this much more than your typical surveys out there that it might be like 9 pages and 100 questions kind of thing. Quick little pulse surveys are a great way to capture information. People seem to enjoy doing it. I almost think it's like on Facebook, and it's like which Lord of the Rings character are you? Like, oh, I'm Legolas. It's this kind of fun little quick thing. Employees seem to enjoy this, and so we get much better response rates when we use these little pulse surveys to capture information. And so our workplace chatbot, I'll kind of let this play through just a little bit, but we introduced this a couple years ago at Liberty Mutual, and so our goal was to start providing quick access to common information, and eventually we got into a lot of system integration. So, for example, you might be able to see it, where it says, hey, I need to reset my password. It knows my context. It knows what accounts I have. So it knows if I have an enterprise account, an admin account, a Safeco account, which is a separate organization kind of along the way. I'm going to ask it questions here like, what's the next company holiday, which differs depending on the location of employees. So that's where it's leveraging context within the answers. My payslip's wrong. We can direct them to information about their payslip and who to contact. What's the link to Liberty Gateway? So especially when we have new hires, a bunch of these words may not make sense. And so we found this is we have sort of this acronym dictionary or a lookup so they can actually ask questions in here and get more information about things they're hearing. Cafeteria menu, if you don't have this on your intranet, this is like literally the number one thing that employees use every day. And this is like not abnormal. This is pretty common at most organizations. It makes sense. They're going to eat every day, right? So looking up the cafeteria menu and simplifying that actually reduces the time that we used to have to spend searching on the intranet. And then this use case here, this is where things really begin to get powerful. So this is where we're doing integrations to platforms. So at Liberty Mutual, that's Mobile Iron that we're integrating with to use for our mobile device management platform. And so, we used to have to call the help desk and say, I locked out my iPhone, can somebody reset it? You'd spend 15 minutes listening to Muzak and waiting for somebody to kind of pick up the phone. And so we figured out, if we could automate this, there's some pretty significant value here. And so you can see it actually knows who I am, knows I've got an iPhone, an Android phone, and an iPad, and then it asks me which device I want to unlock, and then you just choose it, and it unlocks it instantly through behind the scenes mobile iron. And there are some pretty significant cost savings to doing this. So we're pretty closely hooked up and partnered with our help desk, both our IT help desk and our HR help desk. And so just in the description, you can kind of see it here, 3 use cases. So unlocking your iPhone, registering, unregistering your mobile devices, syncing your calendar if it became out of sync. For us is about $250,000 in cost savings. And so if you can extrapolate that across thousands of things that people call the help desk, there's millions and millions and millions of dollars in cost savings, which is why we're putting a lot of focus on this. And so now our help desk doesn't have to continue hiring more and more folks. They can focus on taking the folks that they have and repurposing them on some higher value work. This is another example here of the chatbot, and this is again another example of what Gartner would call that post-app error, where employees don't have to know what the applications are. They can just go to this and ask the platform, hey, I need to submit a help desk ticket. My monitor's broken. They don't have to know the link to the help desk. They don't have to figure out what it's called. Is there an internal name for the help desk? They can just go here and start engaging in these experiences that are all embedded into one platform. So, this week I had a couple of interns start for me, and hopefully if they've got any problems, usually they're, in the first week, they don't have to go figuring out, who to call, who to engage. We kind of coach everybody to go through this platform, and by asking some questions, it gets them the answers they need. And in this case, it'll actually create a help desk system on the back end. So the help desk group is super happy because it's still flowing through their workflow. But to the end user and the experience, it's all happening through this layer. So I've got some information on cost savings. For us, the numbers have gone up quite a bit. Every time you add an integration into the platform and increase the automation, the numbers will go up. So in grand total, it's somewhere between 8 to 10 million year over year for us in productivity savings for the employee. And so this is our knowledge hub. So when we started going down this road with chatbots and figuring out how to enable conversations, we realized that we needed a software developer to create each of those conversations. And so one of the things we wanted to do, one of the things we wanted to solve for was, can we enable our business users, our owners at the help desk, IT help desk, HR help desk, for a lot of those common questions like problems with payroll and those kind of things that they get a lot. And so we ended up creating these front-end screens here, which are self-service for our help desk owners, where they can go through and say, who's the finance contact? They're actually coaching some NLP, some natural language processing. So, they're bulk loading a series of questions, and that's training the bot behind the scenes in how to answer these kind of questions. You're getting real-time feedback when somebody asks those questions, what the response is. And so we're now using this at both the IT and HR help desk to enable business users to kind of build their own bots and build their own conversations. And the conversational hub is kind of new ground for us. I would say that conversation in the enterprise isn't quite there, but it's getting there. One of the things that we're seeing with Amazon and Google Assistants is sort of that lack of secondary authentication. So sort of voice printing at an enterprise level. So the things we're doing with voice now are simple things that we don't have a lot of concerns with security. Like what is the number for the help desk? So if you're at home and you're completely locked out of your laptop, how do you contact the help desk? So we're enabling kind of simple conversations like that. And then as we're working with Google and Amazon and increasing some of the security for these conversations and getting more into voice printing, we're enabling more conversations so that you can see more personalized information. And also integrating with platforms like Slack and Teams so that we can take our bot, and if your team is mostly in Slack, like our development team is in Slack all day long, they're not in the intranet, so we're able to hook in things like the bot into Slack and into those conversations so that we can bring the bot to where the user is. And experience layers, so I've sort of mentioned experience layers a lot. That was a key to our strategy, and I think what made it successful. One of the things that we focused on is, so we started with the intranet because of the traffic. We didn't want to replace our intranet. We eventually replaced the homepage with part of this experience layer, but we didn't replace all those subpages. And so it's a completely different technology stack on the front end. So the intranet homepage itself is part of our experience layer, and it can scale globally, right? So that experience layer is in the cloud. So we once had one of our groups said we're going to give away free Fitbits. They put that on the intranet, and before this, the intranet tanked, right? It wasn't scaled for like that huge spike of demand. Now for this, we're kind of able to scale that globally through the cloud to meet that demand. And then at the same time, we're integrating those systems as I've kind of walked through here. But we found there's additional use cases, or there's different personas that kind of make sense. And so we realized with managers, we had a section on our intranet called Manager Center, which at the time was mostly links and content. And so we realized if we took that same approach and we took our various HR systems for learning and development, goal management, core HR, talent management, talent acquisition, and bring that into that Manager Center page. So here's a more recent version of our intranet. You can see at the top it says Manager Center. This is another example of that experience layer. Now for managers, not only can they submit tickets through the HR help desk through this, at the bottom you can see their team. And so if I sort of zoom in on viewing on your team, you can see things like retention risk, who your high performers are, who's ready for promotion, and then delve into a particular employee's profile, kind of see their career history. And so for the same approach we use sort of across the board for our employees, we're also doing this now for our managers. So now they're not jumping into 4 or 5 different HR systems. The HR folks are really happy because they still get to use the systems they want to use. And now the employees are happy because they get this better experience that's more simplified and aggregated together. So I'm going to end on these last 2 slides here. So just some of the benefits that we saw, we're now up to about 85% reduction time on task. So we're constantly looking for how do we take these workflows, these processes, bringing them down to one screen, one click as much as possible, and simplifying those experiences for employees. Focused on making employees happy. Hopefully we hear they love using some of this software still, where that's definitely an indicator for us. If they're saying we love this, or if this is just okay, we want to hear that they love this, and at the same time that they're happy. Focus on making them productive. As I mentioned, we were at about $7 million year over year. Every time we add an integration, this is now kind of $8 to $10 million for a company our size, which is about 60,000 employees. And so this kind of continues to grow, and we're now saved tens and tens of millions of dollars since we've had this platform in place, and it continues to grow. And then for us, as we started to work with other organizations, they had the same passion, they had the same problems, and wanted to solve this and transform their employee experience. And so that's why we ended up launching this company underneath the Liberty Mutual umbrella called Workgrid. So to summarize kind of the key points, number one is that single pane of glass. And having that single pane of glass separate from your systems of record, right? So that you can replace those really great engines under the covers, but completely control that experience for your employees and have it aggregated into one place. Elevating that communication outside of email, getting that channel so that your communications are not being lost. Focusing on instant access to information and answers for your employee. We see the chatbot. We see chatbots as like the future of search, right? And so, especially with younger generations, and as we're coaching employees to leverage the chatbot more and more, they're running search queries along the way. They're looking for information. So this really, I think this is going to be the future of search in a lot of ways, and then focused on consumer-like experiences. I could go on for like hours and hours on politics, navigating politics and design thinking. I'm a bit out of time, but I definitely love to hear from you. Feel free. This is my email address if you ever like to talk about these kind of things. And our team is here. We're at booth 115. If you'd like to check out Workgrid and see it live, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.